September 7th, 1943. The humid air over the airfield at Espiritu Santo hangs heavy, thick with the smell of high-octane aviation fuel and damp jungle rot. On the tarmac, a row of Vought F4U Corsairs sits, waiting, their massive gull-wing silhouettes casting long shadows in the Pacific twilight. These are not pristine machines for a parade. They are oil-stained, sun-bleached predators. Standing near the flight line is a group of men who look less like officers and more like drifters. Pilots with no squadron to call home. Men left behind in the administrative shuffle of a brutal war. They are the casuals, replacements without a roster, waiting for orders that haven't come. Watching them is a 30-year-old major with a reputation for trouble, a broken leg healing in his past, and a bottle usually within reach. His name is Gregory Boyington. The brass sees a collection of administrative headaches. Boyington sees a weapon. In 12 weeks, this ragtag assembly will not only fly, they will tear the heart out of the Japanese air superiority over Rabaul. But first, they have to prove they are worth the fuel in their tanks. By the autumn of 1943, the war in the Pacific has ground into a brutal, attrition-based stalemate within the steaming jungles and azure waters of the Solomon Islands. The rapid Japanese expansion that characterized the early months of the war has been halted at Guadalcanal, but the Empire of Japan is far from defeated. They have entrenched themselves deeply into the geography of the South Pacific, creating a defensive perimeter of island fortresses that the Allies must crack one by one. The center of gravity for this entire theater of war is a volcanic caldera on the northern tip of New Britain, Rabaul. Rabaul is not merely a base. It is a fortress of terrified magnitude. It serves as the primary forward operating base for the Imperial Japanese Navy and Army, housing over 100,000 troops and hundreds of aircraft. Its harbor is deep enough to shelter a massive fleet, and its airfields, Lakunai, Vunakanau, Rapopo, Tobera, and Keravat, form an interlocking ring of air power that projects lethal force hundreds of miles in every direction. From Rabaul, Japanese Zeros and Bettys launch daily sorties to harass Allied shipping and pound the precarious footholds the Marines have established on islands like New Georgia and Vella La Vella. To the south, the Allied strategy is dictated by Operation Cartwheel, a dual-pronged advance aimed at isolating and neutralizing Rabaul. Admiral William Halsey moves up the Solomons chain, while General Douglas MacArthur pushes along the New Guinea coast. But the geography between the Allies and Rabaul is a treacherous corridor of water known as the Slot. This narrow passage running through the Solomon Islands has become a graveyard for ships and planes alike. The air war here is savage and unrelenting. It is not fought in great decisive fleet actions like Midway, but in a grinding daily routine of fighter sweeps, bomber escorts, and interception missions. The operational tempo is crushing. The environment itself is an enemy as formidable as the Japanese. Pilots fly from crude airstrips carved out of crushed coral and mud, battling malaria, dysentery, and a heat that boils the blood. The humidity rots equipment overnight. Canvas mildews, metal corrodes, and electrical systems short out. In the air, the weather is unpredictable, with violent tropical squalls that can swallow a flight of fighters whole, slamming them into the ocean without a single shot fired. By September 1943, the United States Marine Corps aviation units are stretched to their breaking point. The attrition rate is alarming, not just from combat losses, but from operational exhaustion. Squadrons are rotated in, fly until the men and machines are spent, and then rotated out to rear areas like Australia or the US for rest and refit. This constant rotation creates a logistical churn. As squadrons are pulled off the line, individual pilots often fall through the cracks. Some recover from malaria faster than their unit returns to the front. Others arrive as fresh replacements from flight school, just as a squadron is shipping out. Still others are veterans whose units have been disbanded or reorganized. These men end up in the casual pool at Espiritu Santo and other rear bases. They are qualified naval aviators, trained at immense expense, sitting idle in tents, playing poker, and waiting for orders that the bureaucracy is too overwhelmed to issue. They are referred to as orphans, pilots without a squadron. To the rigid military mind, they are spare parts, unconnected and useless until slotted into an existing machine. But the demand for air cover over the Solomons is insatiable. Every day that Allied bombers fly toward Rabaul without adequate fighter protection is a day of heavy losses. The strategic imperative is clear. The Allies need more fighter squadrons in the air immediately. They cannot wait for new units to be formed stateside and shipped across the Pacific. The solution must be found locally, scavenged from the resources at hand. The command needs a way to organize these drifting pilots into a cohesive fighting force, but forming a squadron from scratch in a combat zone is unheard of. It requires a leader who understands the desperation of the moment and is willing to bypass the standard operating procedures that keep these men grounded. It requires someone who has nothing to lose. Into this chaotic administrative limbo steps Major Gregory Boyington, a man whose career path is as jagged as the coral reefs surrounding the islands. At 30 years old, he is considered ancient for a fighter pilot, a grandfather, in a game usually played by 20-year-olds. But Boyington is not a typical Marine officer, molded by the academy. He is a hard-drinking, fist-fighting aviator who had resigned his commission in 1941 to fly as a mercenary for the American volunteer group, the legendary Flying Tigers, in China. There, flying the P-40 Warhawk against the Japanese over Burma, he learned the brutal reality of air combat long before the US officially entered the war. He returned to the Marines after Pearl Harbor, bringing with him a combat record of 6 kills, though the paperwork to prove them is tangled in bureaucracy. Despite his combat experience, the Marine Corps hierarchy views Boyington with deep skepticism. His file is thick with reports of disciplinary infractions, unpaid debts, and alcohol-fueled altercations. To the high command, he is a liability. A talented pilot, certainly, but an unmanageable officer. Consequently, instead of leading a frontline squadron, he finds himself assigned as the assistant operations officer at Espiritu Santo. His job is essentially clerical, managing the flow of the very replacement pilots sitting idle in the tents. He watches the daily rosters, seeing names of qualified aviators gathering dust, while the war rages just a few hundred miles north. Boyington sees the absurdity of the situation. The logistical bottleneck is wasting critical manpower. He approaches the wing commander, General Ralph Mitchell, with an audacious proposal. He argues that he can scrape together a full combat squadron from the leftovers. The clerks, the casuals, and the pilots recovering from injuries who have no unit to return to. He promises that if given the planes and the authority, he can have them combat ready in weeks, not months. It is a desperate pitch, born of frustration and a hunger to get back into the cockpit. General Mitchell, facing the unrelenting pressure for more air support for the upcoming Bougainville invasion, makes a pragmatic calculation. He has the pilots, He has a surplus of F4U Corsairs that need flying, and he has a combat veteran willing to herd them. He gives Boyington the green light, but with a caveat. The new unit, designated VMF-2 Schienenspal, resurrecting the number of a squadron that had completed its tour and disbanded, is on a tight leash. They are not an elite unit. They are a provisional solution to a temporary shortage. They have no ground crew of their own, no established history, and no respect from the regular squadrons. Boyington gathers his men, 27 pilots who have been rejected, delayed, or misplaced by the system. He stands before them, not with a polished speech about duty and honor, but with the blunt honesty of a man who knows the odds. He tells them they are the black sheep of the Marine Corps, the ones nobody wanted. He offers them a simple deal. If they follow him and learn to fly the way he fights, they will survive. If they stick to the textbook regulations written by men behind desks, they will die. Training begins immediately, and it is unconventional. Boyington discards the rigid formation flying emphasized in flight school. Instead, he drills them on mutual support, situational awareness, and the specific strengths of the Corsair. He teaches them the lessons he learned in the skies over China. Never dogfight a zero on its own terms. Use speed, altitude, and firepower to slash through the enemy formation and vanish before they can react. The squadron coalesces rapidly, bonded by their outcast status and the charisma of their unorthodox commander. They are not polished, and their discipline on the ground is questionable at best, but in the cockpit, they are becoming a single, lethal organism. As late September approaches, VMF 214 is ordered to move up the slot to the forward base at Munda on New Georgia. They are flying straight into the teeth of the enemy defenses. The Black Sheep are about to test their improvised doctrine against the most experienced naval aviators the Japanese Empire has left. The experiment is over. The slaughter is about to begin. To understand the sudden, violent efficacy of VMF 214, one must first understand the machine that makes it possible. The Vought F4U Corsair is not a polite aircraft. It is their 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney double Wasp engine with a cockpit bolted to the rear. It is designed around a massive 13-foot propeller, requiring the distinctive inverted gull wing shape just to keep the blades from churning the runway. To a novice pilot, the Corsair is terrifying. The long nose blocks forward visibility on the ground. The torque of the engine can flip the plane during takeoff if the throttle is jammed too hard. And the landing bounce is notorious. But in the air, it is a monster. It is faster than the Japanese Zero, dives like a lead weight, and carries 650 caliber machine guns that can shred an unarmored enemy fighter in a 1-second burst. Boyington realizes early on that the key to survival is not to tame the Corsair, but to unleash it. He teaches his men that their aircraft is a hammer, not a scalpel. While the Japanese Zero dances and turns with the grace of a leaf, the Corsair strikes with the weight of a train. But a machine is useless without the men to wield it. The pilots of VMF 214 are a motley collection of personalities that would never mesh in a peacetime wardroom. There is Frank Walton, the squadron's intelligence officer, a former LAPD cop who records the squadron's exploits with the eye of a crime reporter. There is Chris McGee, a pilot often referred to as a wizard for his uncanny luck and eccentric behavior, who flies in sandals and reads philosophy between sorties. These men live in squalor at the forward base on Munda. Their quarters are leaky tents pitched in mud that never dries. They eat spam and dehydrated potatoes, wash in helmets filled with rainwater, and dodge nightly Japanese shelling that shreds the palm trees above their heads. This shared misery creates a bond tighter than military discipline ever could. In the damp heat of the Solomon Nights, rank dissolves. Boyington does not hold himself apart in an officer's tent. He sleeps in the mud with them, eats the same slop, and crucially, he listens to them. They begin to call themselves Boyington's bastards, a name the press officers quickly sanitize to black sheep. The name sticks. It becomes a badge of honor. They are the outcasts, the rejects, and because they have been discarded by the system, they feel they have nothing to prove to anyone but each other. This psychological freedom makes them dangerous. They aren't flying to protect a spotless record. They are flying to ensure the man on their wing gets back to the tent for a drink that night. This psychological freedom manifests in tactics that border on the reckless. Under standard doctrine, fighter squadrons are often tethered to the bombers they protect, forced to fly slow and low, serving as passive shields. Boyington rejects this. He understands that a Corsair flying slow is a Corsair that is already dead. He lobbies for fighter sweeps, roving patrols that range far ahead of the bomber streams. His strategy is simple. Go to where the enemy lives, scream in at 20,000 feet, and dare them to come up and fight. It is in the air that Boyington's leadership transforms from administrative to visceral. He does not direct battles from a map room. He leads every major sweep from the cockpit of the lead plane. He introduces a level of psychological warfare previously unseen in the Pacific theater. Knowing the Japanese monitor American radio frequencies, Boyington breaks radio silence to taunt them. He calls out to the Japanese commanders by name, challenging them to launch their Zeros. "Come on up and fight, you bastards," he yells over the open channel. It is a calculated move designed to bruise the pride of the Imperial pilots, goading them into angry, undisciplined attacks where the calm, mechanical brutality of the black sheep can tear them apart. The tactics work. VMF 214 begins to rack up kills at a staggering rate. They fly in a loose, flexible finger-4 formation, a fluid arrangement that allows pilots to weave and cover each other's blind spots. When they encounter the enemy, they don't engage in prolonged turning fights. They use the thatch weave and high-side gunnery passes, slashing through the Japanese formations, disintegrating wings and fuel tanks with heavy machine gun fire, then using their superior dive speed to reset and strike again. The casuals are no longer just surviving, they are hunting. But this aggression comes with a cost. The operational tempo is unsustainable. Pilots are flying 2, sometimes 3 sorties a day. The mechanics work through the night by flashlight under tarps to patch bullet holes and swap burned-out cylinders. Fatigue is etched into every face. Men fall asleep in the briefing room. Hands shake uncontrollably after landing. Yet, the momentum is undeniable. In just a few weeks, the Black Sheep have downed more enemy aircraft than squadrons that have been in theater for months. They are nearing a record, and the press back home is hungry for heroes. But the skirmishes over the lower Solomons are just the warm-up. The Allies are preparing for the final push, and the Black Sheep are about to be thrown directly into the volcano. The target is Rabaul, December 1943. The air war escalates into a frenzy of violence as the Allies launch a concerted aerial offensive against Rabaul. The objective is to suffocate the fortress, to pound its airfields into dust so that the Japanese cannot interfere with the landings on New Britain. For VMF 2414, This means flying into the most heavily defended airspace on the planet. Rabaul is ringed by hundreds of anti-aircraft guns and defended by the elite remnants of the Japanese naval air groups. The missions are terrifyingly simple. Escort the heavy B-24 Liberators and medium B-25 Mitchells over the target, fend off the swarm of Zeros that rise to meet them, and get back alive. On December 23rd, the Black Sheep participate in a massive strike. The sky over Rabaul turns into a chaotic mosaic of flak bursts and traces. Boyington, leading the formation, spots a flight of 40 Zeros climbing to intercept. The odds are nearly 2 to 1 against them. Don't go down after them, Boyington orders, his voice cracking over the static. Make them come to us. He holds his altitude, waiting for the Zeros to stall out as they climb, bleeding their energy. At the precise moment, the Japanese fighters hang suspended at the apex of their climb. The Corsairs dive. The collision is catastrophic. Planes explode in midair, raining debris over the harbor. In the swirling dogfight, the Black Sheep cut a swath through the enemy. They claim 12 kills in a single afternoon. Boyington himself adds 4 to his tally, bringing him dangerously close to the Marine Corps record held by Joe Foss. The squadron is operating on adrenaline and instinct. The maintenance crews are performing miracles, cannibalizing wrecked planes to keep the flight line operational. The physical toll on Boyington is visible. He is 31, fighting a war of reflexes against 20-year-olds, fueled by whiskey and sheer will. The press is calling him a hero. The command is watching him like a hawk. He has 24 confirmed kills, 2 more to tie the record, 3 to break it. But the Japanese are not passive victims. They change their tactics, sending up overwhelming numbers, coordinating their attacks to strip the bombers of their escorts. Every mission becomes a roll of the dice. As the calendar turns to January 1944, the atmosphere in the ready room is electric but brittle. The men know their tour is almost up. They are scheduled to be relieved in days. Just one more big push. One final sweep over Rabaul to clear the sky for good. January 3rd, 1944. A day that begins with a deceptive calm. The mission is a fighter sweep over Rabaul. Standard procedure, yet heavy with the weight of finality. This is scheduled to be one of their last combat sorties before rotating out. Boyington straps into his Corsair, number 86, the smell of sweat and leather familiar and grounding. His wingman is Captain George Ashman, a steady, reliable pilot who was stuck to Boyington's wing through the worst of the campaign. They climb to 20,000 feet, the air thinning, the sun glaring off the Pacific. As they approach Rabaul, the sky remains eerily empty. It is a trap. Suddenly, the clouds beneath them erupt. Not 10, not 20, but nearly 60 Japanese Zeros swarm up from the haze, a rising tide of aluminum and gunfire. The Black Sheep dive to engage. Boyington and Ashman are immediately isolated from the main pack. They spot a flight of Zeros heading for the lower altitude fighting and drop in behind them. Boyington fires. A short, controlled burst. The Zero shudders and erupts in flame. Kill number 26. He has tied the record. But there is no time to celebrate. The sky is a hornet's nest. Ashman calls out a target, dives and scores a hit. But he has tunnel vision. A Zero latches onto Ashman's tail, traces stitching a line of holes across his wing. Boyington reacts instinctively, banking hard, pouring fire into the attacker. The Japanese plane explodes. Kill number 27. The record is broken. But the trap snaps shut. Ashman's plane is smoking. losing altitude. "I'm hit, Pappy. I'm going down," Ashmun yells. Boyington refuses to break off. He dives after his wingman, flying cover, desperate to keep the sharks at bay. He shoots another 0 off Ashmun's tail, number 28. But the odds are mathematical, and they have run out of numbers. Ashmun's Corsair noses over and slams into the jungle canopy. Gone. Boyington pulls up, screaming in rage, only to find himself alone in a sky full of enemies. The Zeros swarm him like angry wasps. Thuds hammer the fuselage of his Corsair. The instrument panel shatters. A round pierces the fuel tank. Fire, the aviator's nightmare, roars into the cockpit. The heat is instant and unbearable. He cannot stay. He pops the canopy, unbuckles, and throws himself out of the burning machine. The wind tears at him as he tumbles toward the St. George's Channel. His parachute blossoms, a white marker against the dark water. But the war does not end because he is defenseless. As he floats down, Japanese pilots circle, strafing him. Bullets whip past, cutting the air. He hits the water hard, the salt stinging the shrapnel wounds in his legs. He inflates his small raft and collapses into it. The sky above is silent now. The black sheep return to base, scanning the horizon for a plane that will not return. The sun sets over the airfield at Torokina, casting long, bruised shadows across the coral runway. One by one, the surviving Corsairs of VMF 214 touch down, their engines sputtering, their wings blackened by gun smoke. The ground crews run out, as they always do, but the count is wrong. The lead plane is missing. The pilots climb out of their cockpits slowly, their movements heavy with a silence that screams louder than the engines. There is no bravado today, no victory rolls. The news spreads instantly. Pappy is down. For the men of the Black Sheep, the loss is catastrophic. They had come to believe in their own invincibility, a myth constructed entirely around the force of Boyington's personality. Without him, the center cannot hold. In the days that follow, a grim numbness settles over the squadron. They continue to fly. They are Marines, after all. But the fire has dimmed. The casuals who had stunned the Pacific Theater are now just exhausted men, mourning their leader. The official tally is finalized, and the numbers are staggering. In just 84 days of combat, VMF 242 has destroyed 97 confirmed enemy aircraft in air-to-air combat, with another 106 credited as probables or damaged. They have sunk troop transports, silenced anti-aircraft batteries, and strafed airfields into ruin. They have done this while losing 23 pilots to combat and accidents. It is a kill ratio that defies logic for a unit thrown together from the scrap heap. But the Marine Corps machine, efficient and unsentimental, moves on. Just days after Boyington's loss, the order comes down. VMF 212 is to be disbanded. The pilots, the orphans who had found a home, are scattered to the winds, some sent to other squadrons, others rotated back to the States. The Black Sheep cease to exist as a fighting unit, dissolving back into the bureaucracy from which they came. Back in Washington, the paperwork for Boyington's Medal of Honor is expedited. He is declared missing in action, presumed dead. The posthumous award is intended to be a final salute to a flawed but brilliant warrior, a propaganda victory to boost morale on the home front. His name is etched onto the wall of heroes, a tragedy of a man who flew too close to the sun. But history has a way of defying the official record. Gregory Boyington is not dead. Hours after splashing into the St. George's Channel, drifting in a raft riddled with bullet holes and bleeding from shrapnel wounds. He sees a shape break the surface. It is not an American rescue PBY Catalina. It is the dark, sleek hull of a Japanese I-class submarine. He is hauled aboard, not as a guest, but as a prize. For the next 20 months, the dead hero descends into a new kind of hell. He is transported first to Rabaul, the very fortress he had bombed, where he endures brutal interrogation. He is then shipped to Japan, vanishing into the secret Omori prison camp near Tokyo. Here he is a special prisoner, his existence unrecorded by the Red Cross. While the Marine Corps mourns him and President Roosevelt prepares his citation, Boyington is scrubbing latrines and surviving on rice water, enduring beatings that would break lesser men. He survives not through combat skill, but through the same stubborn refusal to conform that defined his career. He charms guards, steals food, and keeps his fellow prisoners sane with stories of the flying life. August 1945. The atomic bombs fall. The Empire surrenders. The guards at Omori vanish into the night. When American occupation forces reach the camp, they find a ragged, emaciated figure who claims to be the famous Ace. The news flashes across the Pacific wire like a lightning strike. Pappy is alive. His return to the United States is nothing short of a resurrection. The posthumous Medal of Honor is waiting for him, but now he can wear it himself. He stands on the White House lawn, shaking hands with President Harry Truman. A man returned from the grave, the leader of a ghost squadron that had already passed into legend. The black sheep are vindicated. The pilots who were written off as rejects are celebrated as the saviors of the Solomons campaign. The story of VMF 214 is more than a statistic of kills or a chapter in aviation tactics. It is a testament to the unpredictable human element in the cold calculus of war. In a conflict dominated by industrial output and rigid hierarchies, the black sheep proved that the most dangerous weapon is not the machine, but the spirit of the men who fly it. They were the unwanted, the misfits left in the margins of the roster. Yet, when stripped of the Polish and protocol of the garrison, they revealed a raw, devastating competency. Boyington did not mold them into soldiers. He unleashed them as warriors. He understood that in the case of the Solomons, survival didn't come from following the manual. It came from trusting the man on your wing. War is often portrayed as a clash of systems, but the legacy of the black sheep is a reminder that it is fought by individuals. Their success challenges the very idea of the perfect soldier. It suggests that sometimes the qualities that make a man a liability in peace, recklessness, defiance, and a refusal to bow to authority, are the very things that make him indispensable when the sky turns to fire. The black sheep didn't just fly history's most feared aircraft. They flew for the man next to them, proving that even in the vast, impersonal machinery of World War II, a band of brothers could still defy the odds and rewrite the rules.